Hello and welcome to the FinTech Association of Africa Cybersecurity podcast, your go-to platform for all conversations at the intersection of technology, finance, and digital security across the African continent. I am your host, Dr. Abiola Abimbola, and I am thrilled to have you with us today as we tackle one of the most critical issues in the African FinTech ecosystem, cybersecurity. It's a common buzzword that we hear globally, and I'd like to use this platform to basically create awareness about cybersecurity, not only within Nigeria but across Africa as well. In a context where mobile money and digital financial services are transformed economies and lives, the opportunity are massive, but so are the threats. As we build and scale inclusive digital financial platforms, we must also prioritize resilience, trust, and protection of every user. Across Africa, you realize that we now have digital laws coming up. And the purpose of these digital laws are also to protect the user data. Whether you're a fintech founder, a developer, a policy leader, an investor, or just passionate about cybersecurity or even fintech in Africa, you are in the right place. So plug in, stay alert, and let's get into today's topic. Let's deep dive into keeping Africa's fintech ecosystem safe, secure, and sustainable. FinTech Association of Africa Cybersecurity podcast is here to enrich your understanding of cybersecurity. And to support today's topic, we have Taiwo Onifade. Now, today's topic is on the state of cybersecurity in Africa, the trends and threats and challenges. Taiwo Onifade is a known name in cybersecurity. He has worked with the likes of Titan Trust Bank, Diamond Bank, and he has a series of certifications to his name. His background is not just on security, but also has a technical flair as well, which makes him deeper in terms of understanding the real threats and how they impact the technology that supports our daily operations. Welcome, sir, and I would like you to briefly introduce yourself.
Good morning, and thank you so much, moderator Dr. Abimbola. Yeah, my name is Taiwo Adedoku Onifade. My background pretty much started about 2 decades ago with a telecoms company. Then I started off with Diamond Bank, then later to Titan Trust Bank, where I currently am in charge of a couple of things, primarily the IT security space, ensuring that the security of all our IT assets is done properly, and that's we've been doing for about 5 6 years now. Thankfully, we've been doing great. That's like a succinct introduction of my career growth, or my career path. I don't want to bore too much stories. I want to get into the exciting discussion.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you very much. So let us know, as Africans, we are really into qualifications, as we are also educating and mentoring people. Tell us about your academic background and professional certifications.
Okay, thank you so very much. So, my background is, at the bachelor's level. I studied electrical engineering. I graduated about a little about 20 years ago. Um, my primary options was in electronics and communication, and after that, after some years in the industry, I tried to, go into managerial skills. Then I went to Obafemi Awolowo University to acquire an MBA. That was about 2010 thereabout. But then the drive and quest in me for education is really not stopping. So I was also in Unilag for a Masters of Science in Electrical Engineering. And then along the line of professional certification, I've done a couple, right? The most recent one is the very prestigious Certified Information Security Professional, that's CSSP. Arguably, I can tell you that's one of the exams that there's no cheat. You
Uh,
have to really sit down
how
and
long was the exam for? How long was that exam for?
so now it's a bit tricky, and then I don't want to look as a superstar because most of the conversation when I read it online, when I read it and study, they said you need about 2 years to kind of prepare.
Yeah,
I'm being honest with you, sincerely, I studied for that exam for 3 months or less. So what I did was I've been procrastinating. I want to write these exams, and at the point I just tell myself, guy, you need to just register for this exam. I registered around December, and I was like, should I take this thing? Should I not? And I sat down around February, and then shortly 2 months, but then I was almost a shutdown, right? I was solid because you really need to know the
yeah,
concept, not on the surface. Yeah, I
okay,
have a couple of other ones. CH, that's ethical hacking. I have PCI certification, that's for payment card industries. I have Microsoft certifications. I have, then for my background around infrastructure, I'm very, very proficient with Cisco devices. I have,
excellent. That's good.
all those, most of those CC, whatever,
Yeah,
in security. And then, so pretty much that's just like, it's also a
yeah.
description of a couple of places that I've been.
It's quite the cybersecurity field is has grown with time because most of our parents will have said, "Oh, become a lawyer, become a doctor, become an engineer." IT wasn't something that I think parents would encourage their children to to dive into. Like it was, but has that changed?
So I think the awareness is increasingly changing. I can tell you that for a fact, because just like you said, some years back, no one is really going to think about because it does not really exist in our consciousness. They can't see it, they can't experience it, they can't really say this is going to feed you as an individual because you won't blame our parent, right? They're
Yeah,
interested in ensuring that you have something that is sustainable,
it's never
something that
true.
can put food on your table.
Yeah,
But then they can't see, round about them how cybersecurity has transformed almost our lives.
yeah,
The growth of internet, the proliferation of so many services on the internet, and the need to protect those things, right? All those assets.
yeah,
So it was so pretty much just like I said, my background was I wanted to study. I had this serious flair for technology, but then I was thinking let me just do IT, let me just do electrical engineering and have a base, something that is wide, like, I can actually go into any part. But along the line, I was very clear, man, I really want to do IT. And then, so that's what I started. But when the maturity of, cybersecurity started coming up, it was very easy for me to quickly, kind of graduate into cybersecurity. And I find it very fascinating. The fact that you can, you know,
yeah.
contribute your quota into ensuring that things are safe. People finance are safe, people assets are safe, and then just having that opportunity to be some steps ahead. Those bad
It's
guys
true.
is kind
Yeah,
of fulfilling.
you made a very key point just now when you said that people can't see it. It is because in most scenarios, or in some scenarios, cybersecurity professionals are seen as disturbers, as hindrance to operations. But people cannot really see the value you are bringing until they are compromised. It's really a shame. No, it would be nice if we can twist that scenario where people see the benefit before they are compromised.
So you're very spot on that particular question, and there are several use cases. So imagine in a multi-million dollars, conglomerate, right? And then you have your cybersecurity budget very insignificant. It's
Yeah,
difficult. That's what most of us in the industry face, right? For
yeah,
you to go ahead and defend those budgets, be like, why do you want to spend this amount of money on what
yeah,
for instance, say you want to do a DDoS protection and be like, you want to onboard your resources on some platform to get a cloud-based kind of DDoS protection, and they'll be
yeah,
like, why do you want to spend this amount of money
yeah,
just to prove? It's difficult for them to see. But my own argument is I start with the major impact of financial loss and reputational damage.
yeah, yeah,
Right. So the when the argument comes up and you need to do some kind of justification to say that why do you want to convince me to put this amount of resources, especially in terms of budget, to funding your cybersecurity solutions or getting your environment safer? It's a lot of struggle. But the
Yeah.
fact that you start from from the point of view that, wow, if you don't do this and this happens, you have a breach or a compromise, you will
Yeah.
likely will be subjected to a lot of reputational damage.
Mm.
For instance, if you're in a financial industry and then your customers have an inclination into your cybersecurity breaches,
Yeah.
first they are afraid to say, oh, am I safe? Is
Yeah.
my my money or whatever they are keeping with you, is it safe? Because the fact that you're having a reputational problem, so
Yeah.
that has really helped in shaping the orientation of the C levels. Unfortunately, most C levels, they are concerned about business.
Yeah.
So the only way to get them to say, yeah, we're going to put in this amount of resources is where you're able to now put it into Naira and Kobo. Because first, reputational damage
Yeah.
might not necessarily be into Naira and Kobo, but then there could be financial loss as well. If you
True.
bring,
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that over time is not getting us to, get that
Yeah.
awareness and then
Yeah.
that comfort to say that, oh, so organization lost so amount of resources of money or reputational damage, and this was the way they were impacted. We don't want to get there, so that has been helping us a little bit to get some budget, but it's still a big struggle.
So I love that point. And that brings us right to the topic of today, the state of cybersecurity in Africa, trends, threats, and challenges. You know, with cybersecurity professionals, as you rightly said, it's difficult for us to try to justify our presence because it's only when people are compromised that's when they realize that, oh, we should have done X and Y and Z. It's when their reputational damage is at stake or when they're being fined or when they can't operate as normal. So, threats, challenges, and the trends. How
So
would you describe the current state of cybersecurity in Africa?
So that's
Is it,
that's a very fantastic. That's a very fantastic way to put a 50 years experience or what's going on in the entire cybersecurity space within a few seconds.
yes,
So I would like to put it this way: it's a rapidly evolving environment, right? There's constantly an increase in the cybersecurity threat, especially especially because now almost every stage of our life is on the internet.
that's true. But another some argument, some school of thought will say that why would hackers or malicious users focus on Africa when the foreign currency, the local currency, is not substantial compared to Europe and the West?
So let me answer it this way. The easiest way to answer that is because they almost have that. So for every crime, for every vulnerability to be exploited,
Yeah,
there's a drive, there's an
yes,
incentive.
yeah,
So maybe we'll get to those questions later. But
yeah,
one of the fundamental issues is there are it's easier to do it in Africa and go scot free. You know why?
good,
Because there are no proper, framework. Maybe there are framework in some certain countries, but there are no enforcement. There are no regional cooperation. There are no inter-country or collaborations that involve knowledge sharing, intelligence sharing. So, for instance, it's just like you want to run a red light in the UK or in the
yeah,
US. It's
yeah,
insane. You know why? Because you're going to be caught before you get to where you're going. You have your ticket.
yeah.
Well, you can almost do it scot-free in Nigeria or most African countries. You know why? The technological development and infrastructure development and seriously political will is also a major issue that we have here. So
Yeah.
the incentive for someone that want to do a hacking in Nigeria or in an African country, it's higher because your possibility of being caught is lower. The
And your
maturity
possibility of success
is
is
higher.
higher.
It's higher. So your
It's high.
incentive is high because the first thing is the infrastructure challenges there. There are no proper legal framework that
Yeah.
are efficient and effective, and they are applied to every status. For instance, people. I don't want to start jumping the gun, but there are several things that are so appalling to say. You go to places, they take your information. Imagine going to a place and you have to fill register where you put in your name, your address, your phone number, and you're not even telling me or giving me a comfort as to you want to, protect those data that I've sent to you. And it's a common thing that happens, and people don't even take note of it, right? You want to go and see someone in, a big organization,
Yeah.
right? And then the first thing you need to do is you need to put your name. That is special to you.
Mm.
You need to put your address, where
Yeah.
you stay, and your phone number. Come on, that's too much, an information for me to give just because I want to see a fellow, right? So after okay, let's assume that you need those information. How are you storing those information?
Mission. Yeah.
Are you keeping it? Because
Yeah.
the truth is, right? I am tailgating someone, for instance, right? And
Yeah.
the person is going to an organization. I just follow the person.
Yeah.
The person write the name, address, and phone number. I just need all I need to get that person's contact details is just, oh, I want to see Mr. So 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 so. Do you have an appointment? No, okay, yes, I just so engineering. I will just need to access the same register, and that way I'll see your number, I'll see your address and your name. I don't even need to ask you for such. So
So so
the incentive is so high for
what?
an
Yeah.
hacker to want to focus on Africa, because the maturity level
Yeah.
makes the chance of success of such
Yeah.
hacking very high.
So
That's just
the state, as you have put it, there is need for improvement. There is opportunity for improvement compared to other continents, which is I think that's a fair statement, and it's a honest statement that there is lots of opportunity for improvement. And you also spoke about political will. Apart from political will, what other factors do you think influences this state, this state of we need more growth, we need more opportunity for improvement?
so. Now it's a very, for us to be able to approach this, it has to be a comprehensive and deliberate effort, right? So it starts, for in most of all those certifications, they'll tell you, if you want to focus on security, it has to be top down approach.
Yeah,
First thing first, right? You must have complete buying of the people that are meant to make the law. It surprises to see that the people that are meant to be responsible for making those environments viable, making them comfortable and conducive for cybersecurity practices to be done, are not even aware. So if they are not aware, you can be sure their priority is not going to be, they're not going to be on the priority list,
yeah. But
right? So to
I,
answer the
I do agree
question, right?
with you. I do
Right.
agree with you.
Okay.
But let's take Lagos for an example. I think there are some improvements. I think Lagos has a cybersecurity committee which the governor has set up. So there is awareness is creeping in.
It's creeping in.
It's creeping in, yes.
Okay.
We also have, I mean, there are cybersecurity laws now, not only in Nigeria, in Ghana, and in other African countries as well. That's also creeping in. Whether the citizens or the residents are aware of these laws and the companies are also aware of these laws, that's a different discussion. But I think the laws are beginning to creep in slowly. I mean, they are getting there.
Okay,
Sorry.
so now I want to submit this way, right?
Okay.
I like the fact that you mentioned there are laws, but can tell you one of the best laws for most everything exists in Nigeria. But how much of them are they enforced? Do
True.
we really enforce it, right? So
True.
if there is cyber security, crime, and all that, Even there are, hate speeches, fake news. There are, some, progress in that direction. But what about the enforcement?
Yeah.
So naturally, there's incentive for almost every human being to break a law or to do
Yeah.
something that is not right. But most of the time, why you have people behave properly is because there's a punitive measure, there's punishment attached to it. So in Africa, one of the major things, that's why I said it has to be a holistic approach, right? There are different, fragmented legal frameworks here and there.
Yeah.
Because if there's going to be an holistic approach, there must be, a collaborative effort among the entire African continent.
Yeah.
For instance, they must have a platform where they share, intelligence.
True.
They must have platform where, so if there's a crime here and you're trying to trace maybe the source of fund or the
Yeah.
movement of the fund, if
Yeah.
the fund get out of Nigeria to, say, for instance, another country X, how easy for you to trace that fund? What
I know. Yeah. I know it's
okay,
not easy, but I know it's possible.
what law exists in that country
Yeah.
that helps you to sincerely and legally fight those stuff? If those legal frameworks are not properly, like European Union have GDPR for their data protection, right?
Correct.
So if you are processing data, if you're doing anything with PIS, any form of data, there's a minimum standard and minimum regulations that you must adhere to.
Yeah.
And if you dare violate any of them,
Yeah.
sir, the punitive measure, the cost to you as an organization is
Yeah.
unimaginable. Nigeria have NDPR. I think it
Yeah.
was, started in 2019, passed in 2023.
Yeah.
Now, if that data protection law in Nigeria is being enforced, what happens when you cross border to a neighboring Niger or Benin Republic?
Yeah. Yeah.
You still have laws in those places that
Yeah.
can support that drive. So if there's no collaboration along the borders, along, the entire continent, whatever individual effort that any country is making will be limited. So now he also talks about, the awareness in those places. Well, you spoke about Lagos. Outside Lagos, even in Nigeria, far north, can you say the same thing? Just like what I said, it's ridiculous the amount of informations that, you know, the people give out, you know,
Yeah.
without thinking. They just give it out those information unaware, ignorantly, and innocently. And that amount of information is so massive. There's so much that could be done with it. There's so much things that can be done with such information. So for me, I want to answer it this way. There must first be, a comprehensive approach in terms of the legal framework. The enforcement is extremely important. Then there must be collaboration that transcend just the border of each individual countries.
Yeah.
That way you can have an effective one. And then as much as there are, incentives, we must work on every incentive or whatever makes, it attractive,
Yeah.
for the bad guys to want to focus on a certain, aspect of our industry. So another challenge is infrastructure maturity. You need data. You
Okay.
need data to be properly formatted. You need those data to be accurate. Where do we store those data? How do we store those data? How do
Okay.
we process those data? Do we have resources to store them? Do we have resources to process them? So I also worry or fear about, the infrastructure maturity level in African country as one of the major challenge we have. And then of course, the skill set is another challenge.
Yeah.
Very few of us decide to stay back because maybe love of country and all that. But if you have the skill elsewhere, you obviously can make more money. So the
Yeah.
incentive for, the skill gap set, the few talents were homegrown, they get to a certain point and, they find, application or some sort of what is described as patch elsewhere. So the challenge again is speaking to, capacity. I mean, the resources, the necessary skill set that is needed, in the country and the continent as a whole.
Yeah, that's valid point. Now, let me just touch on that skill set. It's very important to get skilled workforce, skilled citizenry. That's quite important. But there's another aspect that is I don't think we Africans focus on, which is ethics. People might be skilled, but that skilled can be used for malicious purposes.
You're completely spot on, right? Just as the simplest one is hacker. It could be an ethical hacker. It could be black, it could be gray. So the focus on ethics comes into the development stage, and then framework that guides our activities. It's and also to also make it very very unattractive
Yeah,
to crime. That's why most of the time when have discussions, my biggest fear or my biggest concern in this entire cybersecurity or threat or risk landscape is the insider threat,
yeah,
because the guy is just sitting in there, and there's so much the person can do. So I
yeah,
want to say that we should include in the curriculum for the skill training the ethics.
yeah,
Do you understand? So
yeah,
we're not just teaching them how to acquire those skills. We are also imbibing in such talent the need for it to be done ethically.
yeah,
So it won't be an afterthought, not until not when the person has acquired all the skills. Start to tell you, oh, it can only be done this way and this way and that way. And maybe in some very serious countries, or some other advanced country, you can talk about clearance level. So before that, you must have done some background checks.
and then yeah,
If the person failed those clearance level, the person would not be exposed to some certain level of skills.
yeah. I do
So the
agree with you.
person, the
Yeah,
person can at best maybe manage SOC,
yeah,
but being able to do pen testing,
yeah,
do ethic hacking, there are certain sort of background check and current level that the person must have passed, and the person must have given us that amount of confidence to say that, oh,
yeah.
this person has understand the ethics of the profession, and then the person can be exposed to such level of training and
I do
skill.
agree with you 100%. No, talking about skills further, we need to have the skill set. But okay, what do we do when the skill set, as you rightly said, have better opportunities elsewhere and they're moving to those places? And you can't really blame them
Hmm.
because they too they have reasons for moving. They have to sustain their own livelihood as well. So how do we, as a continent, because Europe and America, they will gladly grab these skill sets, but they want to use them to enhance their own infrastructure. So how do we reduce that if possible?
Okay, so I'll I'll use a very funny example, and that is football.
Is what?
Football. I mean,
Football.
football. That
Okay.
imagine how many of our footballers apply their trade outside the country.
Yeah.
So the simple answer is we need to develop ourselves locally and get, if not, so it's pretty much also easy because we might not be able to pay them the same remuneration abroad,
Yeah.
but we should be able to, you know, sufficiently reward those skill sets to an extent that they are comfortable. So it's also a balance, right? Maybe you average monthly running cost in the US could be about $2,000. I'm just saying conservatively, maybe about $2,500, right? So for you to run, you might need to be paying, be earning around maybe 6,000 thereabout. But in Nigeria, you can conservatively run your running costs a little far less. So what I'm saying is, first we need to develop ourselves locally, right? So if we develop our industries so that those industry can self fund themselves and then be able to sufficiently stand on themselves and be able to reward skills appropriately. So appropriately